December 7th. We couldn't let this day go by with at least some acknowledgement of the date which will live in infamy. This day, 82 years ago, U.S. naval base Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Empire of Japan. It led to the Americas, or at least our last declaration of war officially, and hundreds of thousands of American men and women, it caused them to join the military and join the fight. And of course, many, including a couple of Idahoans, were already serving when the attack happened. Robert Abbott Coates was born in Cary, and after attending Utah State, he was looking for a way to, well, make some better money than herding sheep. And the $21 a month salary the Navy was offering him seemed pretty fine to him. So he signed up in January of 1941. A little more than a year before, Glenn Richard Rosenberry joined the U.S. Army Air Corps, the precursor to the Air Force, out in Akron, Ohio. And Richard was allowed to choose where he wanted to go, so he chose Hawaii because, well, why wouldn't you? Richard arrived at Pearl Harbor in January of 1940.
Flash, Washington.
Yes, I was at Hickam Field on December 7, 1941.
The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
Well, I heard this loud explosion, and I never did determine what it was. At the time I got to the parade ground, there were 5 or 6 Japanese torpedo planes going over. The rear gunner waved at us. I ran up to the armament office and proceeded to be issued a British Enfield rifle and a half a belt of machine gun ammunition, and sent back outside and said, do whatever's necessary. I noticed that there were these bombs that were coming down, and I chose to face the bombs and stretched out on the ground. And the bombs hit, and I was sucked up in the vacuum. The bomb actually exploded right behind me, and then, of course, I immediately returned to Earth through the process of gravity, while my feet were hanging in the bomb crater, and I had shrapnel in my left foot. And I proceeded to get the weapons carrier, and some other people helped me, and we loaded it up with the wounded people that were there. I drove them down to the hospital.
And I decided I didn't want to herd sheep the rest of my life, so I joined the Navy.
Bob Coates grew up in Cary, Idaho.
I was assigned to the Nevada, an old battleship. We'd been out on war maneuvers, and we come back into Pearl Harbor December the 5th. I went on Liberty that afternoon and bought my mother a couple of gifts over in a gift shop. The next morning I got up and I went to get me a cup of coffee. And I saw this plane fly over real low, just tree top level. And there was another kid with me, and I told that kid, I said, that damned Army. I said, look at that. They're really trying to make this realistic. They're even painting rising suns on their damn planes. And then this little woman started hollering, and I realized it was for real. The major part of the strike was over by the time I got there. The water was on fire. I thought it was the end of the world, because all I could see was smoke, and I could see my ship out in the middle of this. Yeah. It was the only battleship that had got underway. And I tried to get out there, and I got a boat, but they wouldn't let me on it. The ship was underway, and they wouldn't let me on it. So what I did then is I took people back and forth out to those battleships that were sunken. And the ones that I went to most was the Oklahoma and the West Virginia. The Oklahoma had turned turtle. And they were trying to get people out of there. They had welding torches and everything, trying to cut out the bottom of the ship so they could get some of those people out that were trapped in there. It was a chaotic mess, and you didn't dare drink any water. There were all kinds of rumors that Japanese were landing on the other side of the island. This guy came over to me and he said, there have been some Japanese spotted out there in the lumberyard, and they're going to set that lumberyard, we are afraid they're going to set that lumberyard afire, use that for a beacon for the Japanese fleet to come in here. So he said, get you a couple of sailors to go with you and go out there and see if you can find them guys. That was my story of the night of December the 7th.
Richard Rosenberry and Bob Coates told their stories in 2003 to the Warhawk Air Museum as part of their Veterans History Project. Those are now part of the Library of Congress. Bob passed away, unfortunately, in 2011, just shy of his 90th birthday. After Pearl Harbor, he continued to serve aboard the USS San Francisco, and he played a part in 17 different battles in the Pacific Theater, including Guadalcanal. He would later work 27 years at the nuclear reacting testing site east of Arco. We know it now as the Idaho National Laboratory. Richard, by the way, moved to Caldwell in the 1950s. He passed away in 2014 at age 92. He would be honorably discharged from the Army Air Corps in 1945 with 2 Purple Hearts and a POW medal. You can see all of their medals and hear the rest of both of their stories at the Warhawk Air Museum. By the way, just 5 survivors returned to the remembrance ceremony today at Pearl Harbor, and only 1 survivor of the USS Arizona is still living today.